So, how many freelancers aren't getting paid for their work? And how many different ways are there that can you actually format a comic book script? And what's next for Webtoons in the world outside of online media? My name's Kamal Hennessy. We're going to look at all three of these stories in this week's comics industry commentary. So the first story comes to us from Freelancers Union, which is not actually a union, but that's not the important part of the story. The important part of the story is they recently conducted a survey with a lot of other creator advocate groups and found out that 62% of freelancers at one time or another are not getting paid for the work that they're doing. Now, this is not a new phenomenon. This is fairly persistent. A few years ago, I did work with the Freelancers Union to promote and lobby a new law called the Freelance Isn't Free Law to help freelancers fight with their clients to get paid for the work that they did. There's also a significant portion of the new book that I'm doing, The Business of Freelance Comic Book Publishing, that focuses on what freelancers can do to make sure that they get paid for their work. There's also a video that I did a few years back about this very same issue that I will link down in the comments. So because this is a persistent thing and because it actually impacts so many freelancers, it's something that everybody needs to be aware of if and when they decide to jump in the freelance game. It's also something to be aware of if you are hiring freelancers to understand what kind of sensitivities they may have to the concerns about not getting paid for the work that they do. Now, the second story comes to us from Comics Beat, and it's about a tool called the SCS, or the Standardized Comic Script. Now, what this tool is supposed to do, it is supposed to normalize and streamline the creative process for comics in terms of formatting scripts. Now, this is going to be something significantly similar to what you might find in Final Draft with their comic book format templates, or Scrivener, or CellX. So the idea here is not that there's a one-size-fits-all idea to formatting a script for comics. And you, over the years, will be able to mix and match whichever kind of format you actually think works best for what you're doing. The key thing to keep in mind is you have to actually build a script that will convey all the information that needed for the artist and the rest of the creative team to produce the best comic possible. You also have to create a script that inspires them to kind of add their creativity to the process, because in the end, your readers are never going to see your script. The artist is the first real reader, and that's the first one that you need to actually inspire when you're actually putting together these scripts, no matter what format you are using. And the last major story comes to us from Webtoons, who has actually set up a deal with Surge Licensing, a fairly prominent licensing agency, to go and develop projects for overall brand licensing and for the merchandising of individual IP on the Webtoons platform. Now, this is not a surprising move because Webtoons has had a major influx of cash over the past 2 years, and they've been making significant inroads into the comic book market in North America over that same period. Over the past 6 months, they've also announced that they're getting into print comics. So this is really the next logical step, because when you're dealing with any kind of comic book IP, you're normally going to be dealing with not just the books, but the merchandise associated with those books. So you're talking about hats, t-shirts, posters, toys, whatever. So it'll be interesting to see how many creators on the Webtoons platform actually spin out into merchandise in the next few years. So that's going to be it for this week's comics industry commentary. But now I'd like to hear what you guys have to think about all of the stories for the week. If you're a writer, what kind of script formatting do you use for your particular comics? And if you're an artist, what kind of scripts and information and references do you need to get from your writer to produce the best comics possible? And if you're a freelancer, what kind of issues have you run into with not being paid by your clients, and how have you dealt with those issues? You can leave all of your comments for those stories and anything else you'd like to talk about in the comments. And until next week, have fun with your comments.